Hail hail and welcome to the Temporary Stand and its edition 28 for the year. We are a Hail Hail media production. The lads take advantage of the international break and try something a wee bit different this week in our new Thursday lot. Marty, myself, Johnny, Johnser and Marty will all sit down and have a wee discussion about the Next Gen series and how it's impacting our club, our players and even the rest of Europe. Then we have a wee look at Celtic and its international appeal. More specifically, where are we aiming our marketing sites? And basically, are we aiming it the right way? This is a wee test run, so we hope you enjoy it and we would like to hear all your opinions as well. So nothing left to say but see you on the other side.
Okay folks, we're ready to go here. It's Thursday night, new night for the Temporary Stand, the record. It's a bit handier for all of us, and also we're trying to split it over the Hail Hail media week a wee bit so everything isn't piling up on a Monday and a Tuesday. So we have a good wee squad with us tonight. First and foremost, down in deepest, darkest Ayrshire, we've got Martin.
Hello.
In sunny Glasgow, we've got Johnny.
Hello.
In North Belfast, we have John.
How's it going?
And Glasgow badminton champion 2012, Scotty. How you doing, mate?
Fine, lad. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad at all. Right, we've a couple of wee things just to talk about tonight. There's no football this week, obviously, with the international break. So we're trying to look at some things in a little bit more depth. So, a first item on the agenda tonight is going to be the Next Gen tournament. And we've been blessed in that Johnny has been to some of the games this season and has saw the team play at the tournament. So I'm going to start with him just briefly. Johnny, give us a wee rundown on the Next Gen. What is it? What's it intended to be, and what is the format? What sort of format does it follow?
Okay, it's a youth version of the Champions League, which is now in its second season. It's billed as a tournament featuring the next generation of world-class players. It's a unique opportunity to experience all aspects of a competitive large international tournament, where players need to adapt to unfamiliar styles of play and prolonged periods of travel. Chris McCart echoed this by stating that Celtic's purpose is to develop Champions League players by exposing them to what life is like at first team level. So last year there was, in its inaugural season, there was 16 teams. It's 4 groups of 4. And the top 2 from each group qualified. So this year it's expanded to 24 teams. So it's 6 groups of 4 and they play each other home and away. So after that, when they qualify, it's only one leg, it's not 2 leg when it gets to the knockout stages. So the teams that finish top get home advantage. The new teams this season include Chelsea, Arsenal and Juventus. And only one of the so-called top 6 for England that aren't included is Man United. And I'd imagine the tournament organisers try to get Man United in it, but they're not in it for whatever reason. And strangely enough, one of the teams for last year didn't come back, and that was Basel, who didn't even play their last game in their group stages last season against Inter Milan. I've had no luck finding out why this is the case, but if anybody listening knows, then send us a tweet, because I'd quite like to know why they didn't do that.
I wonder if they didn't take part in the last game. I wonder were they expelled? Would they have been thrown out?
No, they were invited back. Apparently, they just didn't come back in it.
Right.
But funnily enough, if they had beaten their last game was against Inter Milan. Now, if they had beat Inter Milan, then they would have qualified in place Inter Milan, and who would have not been able to go on, and they actually won the tournament at the end of it.
There must be some sort of Italian skullduggery there. Milan must have boxed it off from the Guide or something like that. You know what Italian football's like.
Yeah. Right, okay, the teams, each match there's a squad of 18 players, and the squad can vary from game to game. It's not like the Champions League where you have to submit a squad at the start of it. So that's pretty good. All the players must be 18 or under, with the exception of 3 who can be 19. And this is where the Bosnian player for Celtic, Atajic, he's kind of suffered for this. He's been on good scoring form for the 20s this season, but he's missed out in 2 of the games because there are only 3 19s at the expense of Jackson Irvine, Patrick Twardzik and Callum McGregor. Apart from one of the games against Villa, he came in place of Patrick Twardzik. Clubs are also permitted 2 trial players per match, which according to the Next Gen kind of terms and conditions, it's in the spirit of player education and development. Strangely enough, when we played Sporting Lisbon at Firhill earlier in the season, Sporting made 3 subs at the one time. You were kind of thinking at the time, geez, you don't see that very often. Mm-hmm. But I was reading over it a couple of days ago, and it says you can make 5 subs out of the 7 listed. However, you can only make 3 a maximum of 3 stoppages per game to make substitutes. So it makes sense why Sporting Lisbon done that. And PSV done the same, but at the time we were humping them 3-0. So, and it was only 30 minutes went, so they done it for different reasons. And unless for unsporting or gross unsporting misconduct, suspensions only apply to the next gen series, so they don't, bookings and sending offs don't really apply to the domestic leagues or anything like that.
It's a pretty complicated setup, but it makes pretty much sense when you put it that way, particularly regarding the substitutions. But you mentioned the young lad, is it Atajic or Atajic?
Atajic.
I've heard you talking about him before. Give us a sort of an insight for those who haven't seen him. What sort of a player he is?
Well, he's a striker, but he's not a target man. Yeah, I watched him against Dundee United. I've not seen him play in the next gen, but against Dundee United, I think they won 4-1, and he scored a hat trick, and he looked really sharp that night. But when he signed, he got a couple of bad injuries, so he wasn't really in the team that much. And I think they were thinking of letting him go or not renewing his contract. But this season, I think he's over 10 goals already for under 20s, and I think that's why he got brought in place of Twardzik for the Aston Villa game down at Villa Park. But he didn't score, so back up here in the next game he was back out the team again and Twardzik was back in.
So just to pick you up on that then, Celtic have played 3 times this season, isn't that right?
Yep, 3 games and we've got 3 points. We've won and lost 2.
So could you give us a rundown of who won and what the order was?
The first game was against Sporting Lisbon. We're actually beating Sporting Lisbon 1-0, but Sporting were the better side that night and they deserved to win. They came from 1-0 down to win 2-1. We then went down to Villa Park and we were getting beat 2-0 at half time. And apparently we came out and we scored. Jackson Irvine scored 5 minutes into the second half. But apparently they played really well and they just couldn't get the second goal. And then against PSV a couple of weeks ago, we were 3-0 up after 15 minutes and it could have been 5 or 6. PSV were pretty brutal, to be honest. And then they changed it up after half an hour. They scored right in half time and the second half was just kind of going through the motions stuff. I was sitting with a couple of the guys and old Jimmy Rooney and he was saying that Chris McCart won't be happy with the second half performance and he's surprised that he's not doing it at the dugout. And 5 minutes later they appeared down at the dugout and Celtic made a couple of changes. Because it was quite late on, they hadn't made any changes yet, and against Sporting Lisbon, Celtic hadn't made any subs, while Sporting Lisbon, they made 5 subs, and they ended up winning the game. While Celtic didn't make any subs at all. I thought it was strange at the time. I would like to kind of know why they didn't do any subs. It makes sense. At that age, they must have been knackered.
Absolutely, they're hammering themselves. Martin, you wanted to come in there?
I don't know if you saw any of the games last year, Johnny, but I think we did, we started off pretty well. We got 9 points for 3 wins, and we narrowly didn't qualify. Out of the players last year, does any of them made it through? I don't know if McGeoch or Twardzik, Watt or Irvine, any of them played in this next gen last year and they gave them some good experience?
Last year, Watt, Philip Twardzik and Dylan McGeoch all played in it, and that's where I first spotted Tony Watt playing against Barcelona at Parkhead. And he was a bit of a standout that night and actually scored as well. But we would still get beat at home off Barcelona, but Barcelona were quite exceptional at the time. They scored a couple of cracking goals. But yeah, they've lost those 3 guys and also Paul George, who got injured in April. He scored, Tony Watt scored 3 goals in it last year, and so did Paul George. Then Paul George has been injured, so unfortunately he's not been able to play, but hopefully, I think he's due back in the next month or 2. And he's not 19 until January, so he could still play in it next year.
Right. Did you see any players coming through? Also, we beat the first 2 games against PSV. Do you think there's any players with potential there that could maybe step up to first team next season?
I think it's quite tough for them. I think they've got quite a high standard to live up to, because Watt and Twardzik and McGeoch were all very high standard and they broke into the first team. So these other guys are under a bit of pressure to live up to the hype of these guys. But they've played a very, very similar team for the most part. At the back, the goalkeeper's been the same, the defence has been the same, the midfield's pretty much been the same. It's only really been on wide left and up front that they've changed it about. 9 of the same players have played the 3 games. It's only Atajic and Twardzik that's been in and out of the team, and Denny Johnson, the young boy up front as well.
And do you think moving the games to Fairhills had any effect? Because I think it was a good experience for the players last year playing them at Celtic Park. Don't know if it's maybe had a negative effect.
Well, that was something I was going to ask you guys, but you thought of that, because I've quite enjoyed going to Firhill, but I don't really know the rationale behind changing it from Parkhead to Firhill. Are they getting Firhill for nothing? Are they trying to keep the pitch for the Champions League? What do you think?
Well, what I was going to ask you, Johnny, was I had this on my list to pick up on. I thought the whole concept of it was that these young people will be playing in the big stadiums, so that when they progress, hopefully into the senior teams, that it wasn't as daunting for them. So I just wanted to ask if you had any insight into why Firhill, fair enough, the results might be better, but is it not going against the whole sort of concept of the series itself?
But looking at the last year's tournament, there isn't many teams that play in their actual stadium at all.
Right.
I think Celtic were one of only a few. Liverpool played at theirs, Wolfsburg played at theirs, but Barcelona didn't. Marseille didn't. Man City didn't. So a lot of teams didn't play at their own stadiums last year. And I don't know why Celtic have changed it this year. Again, it's because under 20s are playing all their league games at Firhill. Maybe it's part of that.
I think that's what it is, John.
Right. Well, I just didn't know if it was a cost measure. If it was a cheaper ground to open and close sort of a thing. Would it be cheaper for Celtic to pay a fee for a guy to sort of turn up the Mary Hill rather than sort of having to spend a lot of money putting lights on and that sort of thing, Scotty?
Aye. Well, the thing that I've kind of noticed, just for what John says, is, what was it, last year we had 16 teams in it, now you've got 24. I was always one that we should be punting our young guys out on loan. I mean, it always goes back to, do you ever remember we sent Colin Healy out on loan to Coventry and he come back, and he come back twice a player, to be perfectly honest. And I was always adamant we should be punting these guys out if we're not actually playing. We're playing we don't have a reserve league anymore like we spoke about on Sunday. However, if this tournament gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then that's exactly what the guys are there to play. They're playing a very high standard. I was actually on Wikipedia just looking at last year and some of the guys who were scoring goals and stuff, and they're getting their games in top leagues. I mean, I see Inter Milan have punted guys out to Espanyol. I mean, there's guys going loan playing in La Liga. So I'm so delighted that we're in for the grassroots at this, because if we keep ourselves in and we keep competing, we might not win anything, but if we keep competing, we'll be invited back, and these guys will all benefit, I think.
Hopefully, all right. John, you wanted to come in there?
Well, I'm going to kind of follow on from Scott's point. I agree entirely with Scott regarding guys who get on loan. I think, personally, a personal perspective, if you're not playing first team football between the ages of 18 and 21, then there's very little chance that you're going to make it as a first team footballer. We see that all the time. We see it with Ferguson. He constantly loans players out from the Beckhams to the Butts. All throughout his career, he's let these young guys out. Welbeck, we've seen it recently, Tom Cleverley. He lets them out to lower divisions, gets some experience, toughens them up, and brings them through. Whilst there's warrant in playing this competition, to be honest, me and Marty seen Celtic under 21s play Cliftonville, which are part-time guys on 50 quid a week, probably. And we weren't impressed. The only guy we really impressed us was Tony Watt. The rest of the team was very ordinary. I thought they were getting bossed about by guys, as I said, who were part-time footballers. So, I mean, whilst that's a good thing, I mean, I've seen Celtic youth team a few times on the internet, and I haven't been overly impressed with a lot of the guys at the current squad. I think we've got the best, the cream of the crop regarding McGeoch, Watt, and Twarzik coming through already, but I've a little bit of concern if there's any sort of quality left in the team since their departure.
But you're saying that about them playing Cliftonville. When Celtic, no matter who it is playing for Celtic, play against the likes of Cliftonville will be playing like it's a cup final. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit harsh to judge young players in that respect.
Just even fitness levels, Johnny. I was very surprised, and first touch of the ball, I was very surprised. I expected a wee bit more quality from Celtic, and we were okay. The game finished 2-2, but I thought Cliftonville were very unlucky. And as I say, these guys at Cliftonville will be out doing a day's work during the week. You know what I mean? probably training twice a week, 3 times a week if they're lucky. It just
John.
the touch and the fitness levels just weren't what I expected them to be.
Right, John,
Martin,
do you not think that's a reason to play in this tournament? Because the quality is going to be better. You're playing against the likes of Barcelona, Marseille, Man City, PSV, rather than farming players out to the lower leagues in Scotland where you're going to be playing against kickers. So I think I'd rather get the experience of playing at a higher European level, which, to be honest, is probably going to be higher than the level the Huns are ever going to be playing at in the next few years anyway.
I do think there is merit in doing that, Martin, but I think it doesn't have to be that. I wouldn't really punt the guys out to the lower Scottish leagues. But looking to England, the first division maybe, no place like that, where still a pretty good standard, still decent crowds, gets a bit more experience. Teams like Swindon, of caliber, teams of that caliber. I just think sometimes when you're playing like youth football, it's a bit of a waste, especially if you're good enough. The old adage, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So I think a lot of boys would benefit season 2 elsewhere, or else foreign leagues.
Do you remember the time they sent Liam Miller? It wasn't Jamie Smith. It was two players that went.
Irish player.
Yeah.
It was your man Doyle, was it?
Doyle, yeah, it was indeed. About 10 years ago, we sent them over to Denmark, to Aarhus, and Doyle sort of faded out, but Miller definitely came back a better player.
I was talking to somebody, and my mate Paul, about this in work. We'll try to remember who Liam Miller went and loaned to. He was adamant he didn't he? So he'll listen.
It was he did.
Right.
Went to Aarhus.
In Aarhus and
Aarhus, Denmark.
Was Mark Reaper their manager at the time, Scott?
I can't remember. He definitely went to Aarhus.
Aye, I think he did. So I sort of take John's point. Johnny, I'm going to bring you back in here, but I sort of take John's point about the type of team that you do send your club, your player on loan to. There's no point in sending them out to Stranraer or whoever, Ross County or somebody like that who don't have a really top-notch professional setup. So is the next gen a sort of a substitute for that? I suppose what I'm trying to say is sometimes players can go out of sight and out of mind, but at least if you can hang on to them, there's no reserve league. So if they're playing at this level, at least you can actually see the guys in action and hopefully develop it over the course of the tournament. Is that what it's supposed to be?
Well, it's about winning games in this tournament. It kind of is important, but the main thing is developing as a player and getting used to playing in that environment. So if they don't win, if somebody becomes an exceptional player and breaks into the first team, then ultimately the club's won. They might not win that tournament, but they've ultimately won by players progressing to the first team. I mean, that might be why Man United aren't in this tournament, because their strategy is to put their guys out on loan. Whereas a lot of the teams in here maybe are giving this tournament a chance. It is only its second year, and I think it is really successful, and I expect it to expand to 32 teams for 24 next season.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about this too, if you had any insight as to why, did they initially throw the net out? I'm wondering aloud here, I suppose, did they initially throw the net out quite wide to teams, and because it hadn't been done before, that's maybe why some of the other teams like Chelsea and Juventus didn't get involved until the second phase. They wanted to have a look and see how it would work. Would that make sense?
Well, what was it I read? There was something to do that the teams were initially selected based on the academies and things like that. That was invitation they were invited through, and they were influenced by the quality of each club's academy. But I don't know the criteria for that at the time. But luckily enough, one of the teams that were picked were invited to be involved, and we have done a lot of work in the academy over the last few years. So it probably wasn't a hard sell, to be honest.
No, there's no doubt. Absolutely. Martin, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to take him up on the point on the academies. I mean, I think Celtic have been ploughing an absolute fortune into what they're doing with the kids. I think 4 years the academy's been up and running, and then now is it St Ninians High that they send kids to, so they do the whole education thing. I think there'll be over 40 players there this time. So Celtic are taking it seriously, so I've no doubt that's why UEFA looked to us as one of the flag bearers of youth football in Europe, hopefully.
Well, just on that point, it's interesting to note that UEFA aren't involved in this tournament at this stage. I mean, the organisers must have built relations with the national associations for referees and things like that, but it's a company based in London that run this tournament.
That's an incredibly interesting point. The fact that it's sort of thriving and flourishing away from UEFA's gaze, I'm actually quite amazed that it's happening, and that they haven't either tried to take it over and do their own next gen, or put the kibosh on this one.
That's what you watch this space into it. If it's a success, then they'll probably try and stick their nose in. I'll just mention it. Last year the finals were based in London, and a company who run the tournament are based in London. The chairman's Mark Warburton. He's a sporting director at Brentford and a qualified A licensed coach. So he was the guy behind us.
So he's seen up close, sort of. He knows youth football, is what you mean? He
must do. He must have had a big idea, and he said, and he's went ahead with it, and it seems to be working for him. So fair enough.
I mean, that's even more surprising than the fact that this has sort of came out of nowhere, for want of a better phrase. That Celtic actually said, they saw the value in it, and because it's clearly a valuable project, isn't it?
Well, it's selected games on Eurosport as well, so they must be getting quite a bit of money for that. And I was reading that the tournament organisers pay for the club's flights and accommodation to their away games, so they must be getting funding. So. Because that won't be very cheap, you know what I mean? So they must be getting
that, yeah. Because I mean, you would imagine if you were an outsider looking in, you would see this as sort of as nearly a growth project by UEFA, and maybe some of the market pool money from the Champions Leagues being trickled down. But the fact that isn't the case is it's pretty interesting, really. Martin, you wanted to come in again?
I just want to ask Johnny what you thought our chances of qualifying this year is. I mean, we were unlucky last year, but they kind of changed the format this time. I think is it top two in the highest third place out of the groups goes through or something?
Yes,
something along those
top
lines.
Two go through. There's 6 groups, top 2 go through, so that's 12 teams through. And then the 4 best third place teams go through. So if it was that criteria last year, we went through in 9 points. We had 9 points last season, but 3 of them were away from home, so it wasn't all home wins. We've got a lot cut out to qualify, to be honest. We've got 2 away games left out of 3. Sporting will be extremely tough away from home. They won all their home games last season, so you'd expect them to win all their home games this season. If we beat Villa at home and take something away to PSV, then we could sneak second place. If not, we might sneak in the back door as one of the third place sides. But if we need to win at home to Villa, and then the last games are us away to PSV and Sporting are at home to Villa. So if we win against Villa at home, and then beat PSV away, then we'll have qualified, I'd imagine. Well, it'll be tough.
Sounds like we'll have it
Right, you say it's no end of the day if you don't get through. It's all about developing players. It's nice to win at this age for the guys you get used to winning. It's getting used to being in that environment. If they benefit and become better players for it, break into the first team, that's Celtic going to win from that. That's what
clearly, and that's the whole point about, it's Celtic could well be meeting these players in a couple of years' time at a high level. So it's good that our players already know them. That if they're, as Scott said, if they're making an impact in their sort of home clubs, if we're coming up against them either in the Europa League or hopefully the Champions League over the next few years, there shouldn't be any fear then. They've seen them before, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, right, well, that was very comprehensive, I think.
Can I just say
Go ahead, Johnny.
I just say the next home game in the next gen is versus Aston Villa. It's on Wednesday the 24th October at Firhill, 7pm kick-off. £5 entry, £2 for concession.
And you'd recommend the match night experience, I take it?
I would. It's really good. The Sporting Lisbon game, I'd say there was about 800 people there. A bit less than that for the PSV game. So we've got something to play for, so it'd be good if people went along to see that.
What time did you say, John?
7 o'clock.
Straight there for Barcelona.
Aye, exactly. So we're going to miss that one. Just to get back for the game.
A lot of sore heads on the terraces that night, I'm sure. That's good.
But it's good, it's a good atmosphere, and the pie stalls are open, that kind of stuff. So just don't buy a Bravo because it'll burn the mouth off you.
Can you bring a carry out in?
I could sneak one in, I'd imagine,
If you're clever.
Exactly, I was going to say, you get the funny bottles. Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
Coke Zero. Okay, well, look, listen, we'll wrap that up. But Johnny, I think we should come back to this at some stage just as we go. You can keep us up to date.
Yeah, we'll do an update.
The temporary stand over the next couple of weeks, and we'll watch with interest to see if Celtic actually do manage to break out this year. So, okay, we're going to move on to part 2. Okay, folks, we're going to move on to part 2 now of the podcast tonight. And I suppose we were chatting ourselves this week. For those who don't know, a brand new football program has started on RTE2. called Footballs Next Star. Some people in Scotland and maybe further afield won't know about this, but prime time television spot, 2 slots a week, 5 o'clock on a Friday for the first programme, repeated at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday. And basically what has happened is that Celtic have accepted the chance to take part in this programme, which will basically find Footballs Next Star. So public trials took place in Limerick and Dublin, much to John's annoyance, and they've sort of produced, from what I could see, a pretty decent batch of players from the initial trials, in all positions really too. So it was just to have a wee look at that and the outworkings of it and the sort of the marketing implications and stuff for Celtic in Ireland. John, have you managed to see the programme?
Yeah, I have.
And what do you think?
Watched it on YouTube just today actually. Told my missus to record it last week, but obviously she was busy shopping. But regarding the programme itself, I think it's at least a step in the right direction from Celtic, and it's been a long time coming. As you know, living here, Marty, Celtic in Ireland, our TV exposure is quite limited. It always plays second fiddle to the EPL, which is the Sky propaganda machine. So it's good to see Celtic on RTE for starters, because RTE does have a hard on for anything English related football wise. Can you say hard on?
Yes, you can say hard on. Don't worry.
Just the once.
All right, just the once. So I mean, it's good to see Celtic actually on RTE, and it's good to see the Celtic are embracing young footballers from here, because I think we've been neglected, not just in recent years, but firstly for the most of Celtic's history, there's been a neglection for players from Ireland, and while other teams like Man United have successfully garnered a lot of players from Ireland, Celtic have been kind of slow in the uptake. So hopefully it's a sign of the times that things are starting to slowly change, and we'll see a lot more young Irish guys playing on the hoops.
Fair enough. In terms of where Celtic fit into this, there's not much exposure really at the minute because it's the early stages. It's more showing you the trials and the pitches and stuff, but it looks as if, looking at the sort of header, that Celtic Park and the area, Lennoxtown and stuff like that, are going to feature fairly prominently. In terms of I suppose, John, what's your feelings about how people down south, I mean it's primarily a southern based programme, how people down south see Celtic, and what sort of a shadow does this cast over the club, in a positive light really?
Well, I guess we know. I guess for the viewers or listeners out there, that I'm from the north of Ireland, and Celtic in the north of Ireland, in my opinion, is a lot different in how Celtic is followed in the south of Ireland. I think in the south, in particular, is a very negative attitude towards Celtic, mostly by the media. A lot of the media have kind of pigeonholed anyone who's a Celtic fan as being a bit of a Republican thug. No fault of Celtic fans. They can associate anyone. If there's a rat, for example, they will associate guys in a Celtic top, with the ratting. Whereas, as you know, we'll see ratting on TV here quite regularly in Belfast, and there'll be Man United tops, there'll be Barcelona tops, there'll be Liverpool tops. Will of course be Celtic tops, but I mean, no more so than any other team. So I think RT has painted Celtic in a negative light in recent years. We know that Johnny Giles and all them cohorts in RTE, all they're interested in is English Premier League. That even when Celtic is on the Champions League, they spend little time kind of debating or even showing highlights or debating the games in general. And when they talk about Celtic, they seem to have very little knowledge. But in saying that, of course, we all know Celtic has a hardcore, strong support in Ireland in the tens and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, perhaps. We know in Belfast that it's arguably one of the best support teams in Belfast, and so regarding this programme, I think it's going to be something that's going to push Celtic in a more positive light and show people who perhaps down south knew about Celtic but didn't perhaps know about their history and didn't perhaps know about the club, that what we are, what we're about, and hopefully generate a little bit more interest in Celtic.
Scott, at one stage you jumped the dike and came over to Dublin to live for a year. What was your impressions?
A year?
Was it a year?
No, was it? A month or something?
A month. Well, that's okay. You did your best. You
Crashed and bummed.
you took a stab at it. But what was your impressions coming over from Glasgow to Dublin? Did you expect Dublin to be decked in green and white? And was it much different when you arrived?
Yeah, it was. See, my family, I've no group. My granddad's from Belfast, but I didn't really. He died before I was born and stuff. So I never really grew up like a load of other Celtic fans with an Irish kind of family, if you know what I mean. So I'd only ever been over in Dublin just visiting and stuff, and me and my big mate decided we were going to have a go, and we made a total ass of it, right, and everybody has a wee laugh about it, but we enjoyed ourselves. If anything else, we enjoyed ourselves. But yeah, it was surprising to me that you went over, and a lot of Celtic fans, they have this, the old country, we've got the old country and everybody will support Celtic, and you come over and you realise that, as John says, there is a bit of aggression towards it. There's a bit of and people look down on you because you're a Celtic fan. Not so much coming from Scotland because they see you as real Celtic fans, but it's like the EPL fans see their own as going, why are you bothering? What's the problem? However, in my time though, see the guys who actually did support Celtic, they were far more, dedicated to the club than all these EPL supporters. So in one hand, you got that wee shock, you're kind of going, well, no, everybody does support Celtic, and the papers aren't really pro-Celtic. I mean, even if you look at like some of the films created on Irish TV and all this stuff in the past, like The Van, for example, an absolute stunning film, and when they were showing you the World Cup scenes, everybody's cutting about with Celtic taps. When you watch Republic of Ireland on the telly, they're all cutting about in Celtic taps, and then all of a sudden you realise that they're only wearing Celtic taps because it suits the colour scheme. Do you know what I mean? So that's
your agree with it.
That surprised me.
Well, what I was going to ask you was, is it not more of a working class thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it not? Yeah. Does the Celtic support in Ireland not really rooted in the sort of the working class areas?
I remember sitting in a bar in Downpatrick, with the family we all know, and I was sitting beside this fella, and I started arguing with a Man U fan. He was an older fella, and he started giving me some jip. I think he was looking for the action, but he started arguing with me, and there was an Irish fella sitting beside me with a Celtic tap on, and I've nudged him and I've been like, do you agree with me? And the boy says, I don't support Celtic, I just like the tap. And I was like, you're kidding me on, you know what I mean? And I don't, it's stuff like that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, getting back to what you were talking about, Scott, I moved to Dublin 10 years ago for my university work placement, and I was 20-year-old, and I was pure, yeehaw, everybody's going to be a Timmel here, this is going to be magic. And I went to work, and I was like, everybody, so he's all Celtic sports? Like, no, Celtic are rubbish. And I was like, what? I was working with these guys for 8 months, they were all talking about the Premiership every Monday. And I'm like, did you see the Celtic? And I'm like, no, Celtic are rubbish. I could not believe it. Up until then, I thought everybody in Ireland supported Celtic.
I found
out that nobody in that office supported Celtic, at least. Well, that was in Blackrock, so it's a bit of a rugby place, right enough.
Again,
I was about to say, Cork, Galway, Meath, Limerick, they all supported Premiership teams.
I worked at Blackrock, Johnny, so I did. Sorry about it there.
So you should be. Just to pick that up then, Johnny, what do you think, sort of taking it back from a Glasgow angle, what do you think that Celtic could be doing then to reach out to those fans in different areas in Ireland to promote themselves to them? Is there anything that you think we could be doing better?
Well, this TV show could be a start in that respect. But I really do think they need to do something and catch the Irish youngsters at a very, very young age. Do something like a road show, go to different areas, Ireland, doing a road show, doing training courses and all that kind of thing. Get them in early before they get sucked into the Premiership machine, the market machine, before that happens. That's the only way I can really see that it'll work. Because with the standard of football and stuff, then they won't have any loyalty by the time they're teenagers. They'll just want to see all the best players playing in the big shiny stadiums and all that kind of thing.
John, you wanted to come in there?
I think the most important thing is Celtic can do is to educate and generate awareness of what Celtic is, who we are, and what we stand for. I don't think Celtic suffers from the same problems in the north of Ireland. I think in the north of Ireland, it's very strong Celtic support. We know Marty, myself and Marty live in Belfast, and we go to a lot of go watch a lot of games in pubs and they're packed out. You wouldn't get the same crowds in the pubs for English Premiership games, certainly. So I think the north of the border, the Celtic support is vibrant and it's young and it's growing. It's like we're a strong support, perhaps the strongest outside of Scotland. But regarding down south, I think Celtic could raise awareness. I mean, a lot of young guys aren't aware of Celtic and the history, the story of Celtic. So I'd like to see Celtic perhaps follow it up with perhaps a programme down south, going into a little bit of detail about Brother Walford, the story of migration, which kind of ties in modern times as well. Ireland's becoming a country where a lot of its young people are migrating again, and we see when Irish people go abroad, one of the things that binds them together is watching Celtic games and celebrating other cultural impacts of other cultures.
Just to stop you on that point, because I just want to sort of drill in there a wee bit. If we're going for kids and young people, is that the sort of story they want to hear? You know, do they want to hear about Brother Walford and the famine and the hunger and all that sort of stuff, or do they just want to see big shiny stadiums and great players? You know, is it what? Because we're sort of accepting that if you're above the age of 12 and you've picked your team's your team. You know, if you're following Man United now, you're not going to stop following them, are you?
Yeah, there is a degree of that there. I mean, but I have a few friends who've swapped teams in their younger years. But there is awareness. I mean, in terms of like, you have to make people aware that the Celtic are extensively an Irish Scotch kind of hybrid team, and that the history behind Celtic. So we need to get that out there, and because there is unfortunately a lot of people who don't know the story of Celtic and figures like Brother Walford and Michael David and guys like that there. So it's important to get that out there in these places, and it's and rightly so, it is important because young guys, kids are very susceptible to image, and so it's important that Celtic spends a little bit of money on marketing and raises its profile in terms of its image and how we're seen. In the SPL, it's very difficult to do that because the SPL, you see it on TV, a lot of the stadiums are empty. The football at times is not very good. But being in the Champions League is the key. In the Champions League, you're playing against the best in the world. You're showing young guys, not just in Ireland, but around the world, what we are. There's plenty of tricklers there. And if I recall, that's one of the things that when I recall as a 6-7-year-old that attracted me to Celtic when I had the few chances I seen games on TV. It was the sea of green and white, the tricolours in the crowd, the songs that I heard back home being sung on the terraces. That was kind of the thing that first drew me to the club. So if young Irish kids see that, so it's important to get a footprint on TV. That's probably the most important thing they can do. And I guess the only way that's going to happen is if we are in the Champions League, and then perhaps the Celtics should speak to RTE or TV3 or even TNG about getting games on, even delayed games on the network, because TV is everything nowadays for young kids. But there's lots of other things Celtic, of course, could do to get young kids involved. As Johnny says, they could have training camps around the country where bring some of the stars over. I think Celtic have neglected Ireland a little bit. A lot of the only time you see Celtic players kind of in Ireland is when they come over, one or two come over for a dinner dance. The odd time, and even then, it's becoming more and more rare. So I think Celtic need to look after the fans that do have in Ireland, and then try and from that Celtic base cultivate more fans. Because let's be honest, it's the EPL is intentionally trying to garner fans wherever it's displayed, and it will fill young guys' heads with propaganda about how good the English Premier League is and how it's the best league in the world. The Barclays Premier League. I mean, you got guys like Hoffitz, like Owen Coyle, telling you that over and over and over. Kids will believe these things, so it's important Celtic put up a robust defence and say, look, we've got something alternative with a bit of history, bit of tradition, and something that's relevant to Irish people.
Martin, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah, just a question really to John. Why should we continue to chase the Irish market? What's in it for Celtic? I mean, I don't really see a great deal of growth for Celtic in Ireland. In the north of Ireland, we've got, there's 50% of the population you're just never going to appeal to. The other 50% are probably quite strong. In the south, you're up against the EPL. it's not a huge population in Ireland. It's saturated with EPL teams. I don't really see the point of throwing good money after bad.
Well,
and there's a difference. There's a difference between Celtic neglecting their fans in Ireland, which perhaps to an extent they have, especially in North Ireland. When I was having a wee look today, trying to find out when the last time Celtic took their first team to the north of Ireland, I've no idea. I thought it might have been in 2000 against Derry. Maybe somebody on Twitter can answer that one, because that was the best I could find.
No, even the Derry team wasn't the first team. It was a youth team plus Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton had come back from injury and he captained the side, but it was the likes of Colin Healy and Liam Miller and guys like that who were playing that thing. I think the last time we were here,
that was because it was Derry Agat's debut.
The last time
it was a sparse. It certainly wasn't the first team. Sorry, John, you want to come in there?
The last time Celtic, the first team were in Ireland, I believe, was '84, and I was actually at the game. Apparently, I don't remember being at the game, but apparently my uncle took me, and there was a big rat. Peeler's gun got stolen, and Celtic swore they'd never be back, and kind of stuck to their promise, which is kind of a little bit frustrating. But
they have been here, have sent reserve sides on several occasions with sort of that, the couple of sort of first team players. So Gravison and Riordan were here a couple of years ago playing against Donegal Celtic. None of the first team players at all came this year to Cliftonville. It was just a reserve side, and you said so. But Martin, I sort of wanted to dig into your point then. You sort of feel as if Ireland has been done, for want of a better phrase. Do you think it's more important for us now, if the state of the aim of Dermot Desmond and our Irish owner, coincidentally, sort of wanting to move us into the English market, should we not be focusing a shitload more on England? It's a bigger population with a massive, massive Irish diaspora. Should our marketing efforts not be sort of based in there to kind of normalise Celtic as a club down south?
Yes. I don't think we should stop at England, and I don't think we should stop at Europe. And I think Celtic are doing. I was reading up on this today. It really surprised me that they've got ties in India with the Mahindra Group, which are a multinational billionaire company in India, and they've actually trying to bring grassroots football through in India. I mean, India is a huge untapped market for football. You've got cricket, you're up against cricket, but it's a huge untapped market. You've got a huge growing middle class. If it's all about earning as much money as possible, is what football seems to be these days, why concentrate in a tiny wee market like Ireland, which, let's face it, is small population, it's in recession? Focus on England. If the goal is to get into the English Premiership, then fine, focus on that, do some PR activity around that, but take it further afield, do the stuff that we're doing in India, maybe China, Korea, which we've obviously got a bit of a foothold in just now, and Japan. So I think Celtic have been doing well. Similarly, South America, we've got the tie-up with Santos Laguna. Not entirely sure what that is reaping as yet, but I think there's commercial deals in the pipeline. But I think that's the area we should be looking at rather than focusing on Ireland. So let's face it, if you're a businessman, you've got the fans in Ireland, are you really going to grow it that much more?
Fair enough. John, you wanted to come back?
I think it's not about money. I think it's about the soul of the club. Celtic without the Irish connection, just being on our club, just being on our hips.
Celtic's always going to have the Irish connection. Celtic can't do any more in Ireland that's going to promote the Irish connection anymore. We've got the Irish connection. We're playing green and white. You just said you see all the Celtic tops at the Ireland games and things like that. I think there's a strong bond between Celtic and Ireland. I don't think there's any more work needed there. I think Celtic have done a lot of work in the past.
I think in terms of the
to do good work.
Hang on a wee second, John, but just to pick you up on that point, Martin, it was Scott who raised it about if you watch the Ireland matches, you'll see people in Celtic jerseys. First and foremost, there is a hardcore Celtic support absolutely attend those games. There's no doubt in my mind about it. I've stood among them. A lot of them, as I say, come from working class backgrounds where they are Celtic fans, and there are big Celtic supporters clubs in Dublin and beyond. But what I was sort of suggesting there was too, before the FAI sort of copped on about merchandising and that sort of stuff, you couldn't really get Ireland jerseys. They were difficult to come by. So it was easy then to go out and buy the colour, the closest colour you could find, which was obviously Celtic because they were a wee bit ahead of the game. But Scott, I wanted to bring you in there because you had mentioned, and we were talking about this earlier on, but you'd flagged up Man United as sort of having a systematic approach to foreign markets, to spreading the word and bringing in more money that's then reinvested into the club. And you had given me some examples, like obviously, Park, Deesong Park, and I think you had said that they had signed Kagawa, in a similar vein this year. We've tried it 3 times as far as I can see with Douay, Naka, and then obviously at the lesser extent with Kogi, what's his features?
4, 5.
And then Who's
Mizuno.
the two Koreans?
The
So
two Koreans,
two Koreans, two Japanese,
Two Japanese, Chinese.
the two Chinese.
So what
Zhang Ji.
have they been a success? You know, if you look at Naka and then maybe the other ones, or what are we doing wrong? Are we not doing it in a sustained fashion, or what?
It's subjective, isn't it? Because we're sitting here really with the facts. I would like somebody, and even Man United as well, I would like somebody to kind of give us 100% certain this is what the clubs are achieving for it. Martin said a right good point, right? India's a kind of market. India's trying its damnedest. It tried its damnedest to have this premiership. It flopped there, but they're trying to really sell. The English market in India is massive now, so maybe Celtic should be trying. To get back to the point you asked me, I mean, Chaduri was on telly over there, I don't know, many times. We signed Ki Soo-young, but as much as Ki Soo-young, we'll not get into the argument how good a player is or how, right? But the one guy that really worked for us on both levels was Nakamura.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have we been invited over to Korea to play any glamour friendlies? I don't think so. Did we ever get invited over to China to play glamour friendlies? No. But with Nakamura, the Japanese captain, the poster boy, we were invited over to Japan and we played a game on a Thursday at 1 o'clock or something stupid, and we made £1 million it. So, Man United have got the right idea. Man United tried to go and get a young guy. It was Dong Fangzhou, and the guy was potential, and ultimately nothing. They went inside Ji-sung Park, at that point the best South Korean player on the planet, and they reaped the rewards allegedly because of this, increasing their own very large market in Asia. So, I mean, they've now went and got Kagawa, who is a class act, is an absolute class act. So Celtic need to find a way, if they want to keep on top of this. I mean, ultimately we try to go and get Mexico. We try to break into Mexico. Martin brought up the Santos Laguna. I see nothing benefiting Celtic for this Santos Laguna thing, apart from when we won the league they tweeted us, and when they won the league they tweeted back. Right, because we don't sell jerseys, we don't get kept up to date with our scores, we don't do anything TV wise. I don't see why the Mexican league, which has always been very affluent, really needs to be connected to a Scottish league.
Well, I'm gonna just before we go any further, I'm gonna bring John back in, because John, you it must be 4 years ago. I remember you were the first person that said to me about Mexico, that I remember saying that Lawwell's going to have his eye on that market, and there we walked out and saying Juarez. Why did you say that? What made you think that Mexico was the place to be?
At the time, but I think it was actually before all the drugs problems in Mexico happened, and Mexico was becoming a more affluent part of the world. It was an on-top resource in terms of footballers. We've seen footballers from Brazil and Argentina. So it's got close proximity to the United States. So, and it's a football crazy country. So I thought it was like a no-brainer regarding that aspect. It's untapped, and I thought Celtic could get into the action. One of the problems I see with Celtic is we don't tap into. In my opinion, Celtic don't best expose what is so unique about Celtic. Let's be honest here. Celtic, well, the two things that make Celtic unique are its Irishness and its Catholicism. Anyone else can argue differently, but in my mind, that's the two things that make Celtic unique. I know we're an open shop and we're with fans from everywhere around the world, but for people who come for people who are not already Celtic fans, that makes them guys in that league, guys in America. That makes them have Celtic as their maybe their second team, or take an active interest in Celtic, and it's for those two reasons. So for me, I don't think Celtic should be pairing up with other teams in these other countries unless it's for exchange of players. But I'd like to see Celtic pair up, do something that Liverpool at the moment are trying to do, where the Red Sox are the baseball team and Liverpool are the football team. And so they can get the Red Sox fans start to take an interest in soccer. We're seeing that silly program that's on Channel 5 on a Friday as part of that. So I'd like Celtic to see a little bit why not Celtic with the Boston Celtics? Why not Celtic with, I know there's some issues regarding Nike and Adidas, or Notre Dame. some sort of commercial tie-up and some sort of back and fro in terms of training techniques, and playing on our strengths in terms of being an Irish club with strong Catholic links, and selling that, because in America that's what sells. People may laugh and look at guys in Scotland who well, we're not a Catholic team and all, but that's okay in their main they're not. But for a lot of our people's mains, that's what Celtic are. That's what Celtic represent.
To go back on what Scott. To go back on what Scott said.
Maybe we should stitch Rosary beads into the strips as well, eh?
Hang on a second. Hang on a second, because you're going to go off on a tangent on me here. Stick with this one. I want to go back on what Scott said slightly. What's in it for Boston Celtics and what's in it for Notre Dame that link up with us? What's in it for them?
Mm-hmm.
What's in it for them?
Yep. Why would they be interested in tying up with a small team relative to what they are? Their fan base is, like if you're talking about the Boston Celtics, their fan base is in tens of millions. How many does their stadium hold? It's more than Celtic Park. So why would they...
Celtics? Well, I think your stats are wrong, Marty.
Right, okay. All right. But why would they be... Okay, we'll take your point on that. Why would they be interested in linking up with a small league team from Scotland, operating in a tiny league with no coverage whatsoever, apart from a sort of a smattering of Celtic supporters clubs around America?
Well, if you think small, then you'll always achieve small.
I'm asking you, what's in it for them?
What's in it for them? Of course, I mean, people. I walk around Belfast and I see guys in Notre Dame shirts, and why could Celtic not suddenly start selling Notre Dame gear or Boston Celtics gear? I mean, if I go to America, I brought back lots of Boston Celtics clothes. It ties in where the general ethos of the teams, especially Notre Dame. This is what they are. Of course, there's going to be natural interest. The two teams complement each other because they both represent similar beliefs, similar ethos, similar ideals, similar backgrounds. That's my opinion. And if you think small, Celtic are about the SPL, then that's all we'll be. But when Celtic are back in the Champions League like now, there's a global audience, and we should be exploiting that to our maximum. Okay.
Martin, you wanted to come in. Have you got your rosary beads handy?
I'm just stitching them into my top just now, because I want to promote Catholicism as much as possible, being Celtic. But just going back to talking about Asia, and then what Scott says is right, Man United are absolutely huge in Thailand, South Korea, and we were big in Japan. I think Celtic did have an effect in Korea. I mean, as you know, my brother lives over there, and he often says he sees quite a lot of Celtic, well, not a lot of Celtic tops, but he sees Celtic tops, and he always makes a point to go over and chatting to them. And he always tells a story of a guy where head to toe in Celtic tracksuit, and he was so knowledgeable at the game, it was incredible. And he only started supporting Celtic because of the signings we made. But that's not where the money is in terms of the future, I don't think. Because obviously Asia is a huge counterfeit culture anyway, so we won't make a lot of money from shirt sales. The future is going to be in the online rights through IPTV and stuff like that. And this is where the future's going. I mean, everyone's going to be watching the TV online in the future. And I mean, that's what they do in Korea just now, and Japan.
Well, again, but I'm bringing you back to the point. Why would some young Korean fella want to watch Celtic? Why would he want to pay a subscription on a website to sit and watch us? Playing who? Simmering.
That's a good point, but they do it just now to see their players.
Exactly, yeah. So you need to have Asian bodies in the building before they're going to take an interest. Scott, you wanted to come in?
It's basically to get back to a wee bit, right? And I disagree with John, but then I do agree with John. Right. First of all, I disagree with John's opening gambit. We've had hundreds of Irish players at Celtic. Hundreds of them. I'm sure, John, did your cousin actually come on and play for us? Right? We're no getting top notch, or they're no making the breakthrough. But if you can go through Celtic's reserve teams and under 20 teams for the past 10 years, and you'll find a bootload of them. Right? Yeah. Know what I mean? So this calm down with that. Keeper Marty, you've told me recently that Celtic's coaching's got 20 times better in Ireland. Is that true?
Well, they're scout. No, they have, John. I mean, I've seen them over in Belfast doing coaching sessions in places like the Brook Activity Centre in Twinbrook, and it's pretty expensive compared to some of the other clubs. Some of the Premiership clubs do it too. I know the Huns have done it as well. artists formerly known as the Huns. But I've watched their scouting's changed. You know, they really have changed. A couple of years ago, we had Declan Bunting on the pod a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately we didn't manage to upload the podcast for audio reasons. We're going to do it again. But he spoke about how he was scouted, and it was a world away from where it was 10 years ago under Martin O'Neill. It really was. You know, it was systematic. I mean, Martin O'Neill basically had a guy here who he knew from school. You know, and he used to send over the odd fella, you know, who maybe wanted a tracksuit. That's not the case now. Well, it's, you know, that's how it was. Mm-hmm. Those kids wouldn't get through the gates of Lennoxtown now because of the systematic nature of the academy. You know, and the kids are told before they leave about St. Ninians and the fact that you think you're coming to play football, you're going to be one tired boy because we'll have you from 7 in the morning and you won't be getting into bed again until 10 o'clock at night. You'll go to school all day and then we'll take you and train afterwards. You know, so I suppose from that sense, it's weeding out the weak immediately, and you're looking at players like Paul George, and you're looking at young Pat McNally, who's there at the minute, you know, and they're serious kids, you know, they're serious about their football, and they're not over to Glasgow for a party. So yes, that has changed. It's become much more systematic, and it seems to me that Celtic have finally gotten it right. Now, how many boots on the ground they have here, you know, how many scouts they have operating, I'm not sure, but looking at their approach so far, it's changed immeasurably, you know.
Right, to continue with my point, I've got to agree with what John says. It's got to be about more than money. I understand Celtic's in a position where they're trying to make money. We have changed our transfer policy in terms of what we're aiming to buy small, sell big. The way it's going to now, that looks like it's going to be good. It looks like it's going to work for us. We've got a whole team of assets, and every time we get a point or a good performance in the Champions League, boom, there's another 50 quid on your price tag. Every minute it goes, boom, boom, boom. Right, that's how Porto don't sell guys for millions of pounds because they're brilliant in the Portuguese league. They sell them because they're playing well. So see the guys in Ireland, see the hardcore in Ireland. I do think we should be going back to these guys. I appreciate it's a saturated market, but let's go and look after the guys we've got. And if we look after the guys we've got, people will see that they're looking after, and they will look at that and go, that's how I want treated. And it even goes to the American market. Your man, Graham, right? And I listen to his show every week, and then I was on Vegas last year, and I don't feel that Celtic treat their customers the new, because ultimately that's what we are. They don't treat their customers the new right, and they're hooring themselves around the place, trying to get mayor, trying to get somebody who'll just fling money. But, I mean, the guys in America and the guys in Ireland, they're our biggest sales reps, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you treat the guys right, they'll treat you right back. And if that means putting on deals for these guys to get the games, putting on deals for these guys to come out of the games, I think you'll see a benefit. John Fairler on for Glasgow is 100% right. We've got to try and get these guys young, because ultimately, see now, if your dad's a Man United fan, there's 9 out of 10 families, the boy's got to grow up a Man United fan. But did the Denny's listen to, it was the Homeboys, and some wee Irish fella phoned up and he was going, I didn't know nothing about Celtic. And you're kind of going, you what? And he says, I didn't know nothing. I came to Scotland and all my mates said, support Celtic, and what a team, brilliant. So there's a whole load of these guys floating about. I don't think Ireland's that saturated. I just think if we start treating our fans a wee bit better, and I'm including myself here, I'd like to be treated a wee bit better as Celtic. Treat these guys right, then I think you'll see the benefit in 10 years. We're sitting now with a good product. Not in terms of the SPL, in terms of the Champions League, we're sitting with a good product. Treat our fans a wee bit right. Help the guys in America become bigger. Help them get their CSCs together again.
But Scott, just to stop you there, what I'm sort of getting at here is, right, we all know that the average American fan has been kind of neglected. Celtic refused to send out the cups and stuff last season, but John pointed out earlier on, Celtic haven't been in Belfast since 1984. In the last 10 years alone, Celtic must have played in America at least maybe a dozen times. You know, sometimes 3 games in a year. You know, this year they flew out against Real Madrid. So while the base level isn't being well looked after, in terms of visibility level, in terms of the Real Madrid, Man United, Liverpool, Roma level, Celtic are there in America. They're they're competing at that level in terms of market and promotion, aren't they?
Aye, because why are they there? Do you know what I mean? Why are they there? Because the Bucks are there, mate. So you've got to then think that the Bucks aren't there in Ireland to play. So again, it comes back to my whole point. Sometimes it's got to be about the people. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how it can't cost us that much to go over and play a big game in Belfast. It can't. It really can't. Do you know what I mean? But what is it? Maybe the teams aren't big enough. So why no? I mean, what ground would you play? Say you pulled Liverpool would be another massive, or Man United. Where would you play a large game or there? I mean,
it would need to be at Ravenhill, which is in the other territory. There's nowhere in the Catholic side.
Exactly. You're not going to play in Windsor, are you?
No.
No, I mean, so is that where the thing is? You're going to America, you're playing in these fucking absolute stunning big massive stadiums and getting paid £1 million for it. But no, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that's you've got to be sensible about it sometimes. You know what I mean? That's just why we've been doing to the Dublin tournament.
That was going to be my next point. John, we went to the tournament in Dublin last year that wasn't picked up again this year. Did you think that was a useful exercise? Should it have been done again?
Yeah, but it could have been done better as well. I thought we should have played an English team, and I think Dublin were a little bit worried about pitting us with an English team. There was no real support there, only the Celtic support. We all made a weekend of it, a bit of a drunken weekend, but it was a good laugh. Going back to Belfast, I don't want to harp on about Belfast, but I recall a few years ago, the Celtic brought a team over, and there was a few first team guys in it. Just a few now, mind you. Barry Robson, and who was the other ones, Marty?
Is this the match at Solitude?
Aye.
Against Cliftonville. Mark Crossass was there.
Mark Crossass.
People like Paul Caddis, who were in the team, but weren't stars,
Yeah. Well, we went to that game, and it was packed. Solitude was a few thousand at it, and there was lots of little kids there, and Celtic got beat 3-0 by Cliftonville.
They did. They got stuff that was on TV as well.
It was embarrassing. I mean, we seen lads. It was full of kids and cheering Celtic, and Cliftonville beat them, and that's kind of the thing that frustrates me with Celtic so much. It's like they kind of they've always got a habit of doing things wrong and kicking them, whereas Man United are just like they go to different places and they'll win, and they put on a bit of a show, and they're like box office a little bit. Man United behave a little bit like the Harlem Globetrotters. Go over and do the business, put on a show. It's all very slick. Celtic come over, bring a couple of guys over and get horse 3-0 and embarrass themselves. And they did embarrass themselves against the team of part-timers. We went to the game in Dublin. There was a very few thousand Celtic fans there, but Celtic played Inter Milan and who had no support and no interest in neutral.
Played the FAI 11.
Yeah.
As well. Containing players like James McLean.
Yeah. So, again, it wasn't really ideal, but it's a start, and I just think it all boils down to who makes these decisions at Celtic, and I think, as you said, Scott, if you look after, from little acorns grow big trees. I mean, I have two boys of my own, and I'm trying to get them interested, one's 7 and one's 2, and trying to get them interested in the Celtic, and you have to give them, the older boy talks. He follows Celtic because of me, I have to say. But I already see other kids talking about EPL teams with him, and he asks me questions about different players like Wayne Rooney and stuff. So it's up to Celtic to kind of market themselves better to kids as well. I mean, there's not really for young kids. There's nothing for Celtic in terms of kids' attention levels are very small, and there's not apart from the football. There's nothing else. Celtic provide for kids to get them involved, like the Huddle Hound Club's rubbish. My boys are in it, but do you know what I mean? There's nothing on the websites for kids. No one's into kids, so Celtic have a lot of work to do for kids in general. To get them involved in Celtic, in my opinion.
Okay, Martin, did you want to come back in there?
Yeah, well, John's kids must be really confused with his Man United Red Devil tattoo. But apart from that, Scott, you were saying about Celtic need to do more for their Irish fans. See, to be honest, I mean, I don't know how much more they can do. It seems like every second week they rig the Paradise Windfall draw, so one of them wins it.
We just pay more money into the windfall draw. That's your miserable Scots problem, that's why. Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
No, that was it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, Scotty, did you want to come back?
Well, I know somebody for the Garngad that won it 2 weeks ago, so shut up.
Don't start it. We've already had that around the huddleboard this week. So I'm not sure we're going to solve anything tonight. I suppose all we've done really is provide a bit of food for thought. We've looked at, at Celtic World Way to see where we're going. It is an international week, so it does give you a chance to sort of bite the bullet and have a yarn about these things. So we're going to call it the closer unless anybody has anything to say. Speak now, forever hold your peace in the ready position with the safety catch off. Great, thanks very much, lads. Martin, thanks a million. Johnny's dropped off the feed. He's away to fix his badminton racket that he broke walloping it off a wall earlier on this evening. But Martin, thanks very much.
Cheers, thank you.
Johnser, good night, God bless.
Night.
And Scotty boy, Hawaii.
Well done, Marty boy. Well, that's us. Some interesting stuff, some not so interesting stuff, some bump and some not so interesting bump. As I said at the beginning, this is a wee trial run, just to see if it's worth carrying on with, taking advantage of Celtic's lack of playing time. So, we'd like to hear all feedback, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And you can hit us up on Twitter, it's @TemporaryStan. You can email us at temporarystand@hailhailmedia.com. And as always, you can get us on the usual message boards. As always, we thank you for taking the time to download this and all the other Hail Hail Media pods. Really appreciate it. So that's us for the night. Good night. God bless. Hail Hail.